The call came in at 6:14 on a Tuesday morning in February. Terrence Okafor had been awake for 20 minutes, standing at the kitchen window with a mug of coffee he hadn't touched yet, watching the snow come down over the backyard in Brampton. The kind of snow that falls slow and heavy and makes everything outside look like it's holding its breath. His phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen was Pauline. Not a name he expected to see at 6:14 in the morning. Not a name he'd seen light up his phone in almost 2 years. He picked up. Terrence. Her voice was thin, like she was trying to keep it from breaking in half. "Pauline? What's wrong?" A pause. He heard wind. He heard what sounded like a car passing. "I need you to come get me." "Where are you?" "I'm outside." Another pause. He changed the locks. Terrence had known Pauline Achebe since they were teenagers growing up in Scarborough. They'd gone to the same high school, run in the same loose circle of friends, lost touch when he moved to Brampton in his late 20s for work. They reconnected at a mutual friend's wedding 6 years ago and picked up right where they left off. Easy conversation, comfortable silences, the kind of friendship that doesn't need maintenance to survive. He knew about her husband, Dennis. He'd met the man twice, both times at the same friend's birthday gatherings where Dennis stood slightly apart from the group, answering questions in full sentences, never asking any back. Terrence hadn't liked him immediately, but he'd put that down to his own personal taste. Some people were just private. He found out later that private wasn't the right word for it. Pauline had called him 14 months ago, crying so hard he could barely understand her, to say that Dennis had grabbed her by the wrist in the kitchen and twisted it until she sat down. She said it like she was confessing something she'd done wrong herself. Terrence had stayed on the phone with her for an hour. He'd offered to drive over. She'd said no, she was fine, please don't. It wasn't as bad as it sounded. He'd believed her because she needed him to. After that call, things went quiet again. She texted occasionally. "How are you?" "Good." "How are the kids?" "Good, yours?" "Fine." The kind of text that say nothing and mean. "I'm still here, I haven't disappeared. Please don't ask me anything I don't want to answer." He had 2 kids, his son Tobias, 12 years old, and his daughter Yemi, who was 9. They lived with him full-time since his divorce 4 years ago. His ex-wife, Claudette, had moved to Vancouver for work and came back for school breaks. It was the arrangement they'd landed on after a year of difficult conversations, and it worked. Most of the time it worked. The apartment wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, a pull-out couch in the living room that Tobias called the boat because it creaked like one every time you sat on it. The kitchen had just enough counter space for Terrence's coffee maker and the kids' backpacks and whatever was thawing for dinner. It was a home built for exactly 3 people, no more. He drove to Pauline's house in 22 minutes. She was standing at the end of the driveway with 2 canvas bags at her feet and a small duvet thrown over her shoulders like a cape because she hadn't been able to get to her coat. The snow had eased off a little. She was wearing socks inside rubber boots, the pocket of footwear that said she'd grabbed whatever was nearest to the door. Terrence got out of the car. He didn't say anything at first. He just picked up both bags and put them in the trunk. Then he opened the passenger door. She got in. He got in. He turned the heat up all the way and pulled out of the street without asking her anything. They were on the highway before she spoke. He said if I tried to come back in, he'd call the police. Terrence kept his eyes on the road. "For what?" He said I'd been harassing him. She laughed, a short, broken sound. 12 years. 12 years, and he says I've been harassing him. He didn't answer that. There wasn't an answer for that. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said. "My sister's in Halifax. My mother's. I can't call my mother. She'll say I should have stayed." "Okay," Terrence said. "I'm not asking to stay forever. I just need Pauline." He glanced at her. "I have a pull-out couch." She looked at the window. He saw her throat move. "Tobias calls it the boat," he said. "Because it creaks. He thinks that's hilarious. Yemi disagrees." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I'm sorry to do this to you." "You're not doing anything to me." He meant it. That was the thing. He said it and he meant it completely, with zero hesitation, and that surprised even him a little. The kids were already awake when they got back. Tobias was at the kitchen table eating cereal and staring at his tablet. Yemi was on the couch in her pudges, with her hair wrapped in a towel that was twice the size of her head. She'd showered before school, which she'd started doing recently because she'd decided she was old enough for that. They both looked up when Terrence came in, followed by a woman they didn't know, carrying 2 bags. "This is Pauline," Terrence said. "She's a good friend of mine. She's going to stay with us for a bit." Tobias nodded like this was a piece of information that required filing. "Okay." Yami stared at Pauline for a moment. Then she looked back at Pauline. "Are you cold?" she asked. Pauline blinked. "A little." Yami got up from the couch, walked down the hall to her room, and came back holding a pair of wool socks. "These are warm," she said. "I got them from Grandma at Christmas. You can borrow them." Pauline took the socks. She held them for a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she said. It came out quieter than she intended. Yemi nodded solemnly, like a small professional who'd completed a task, and went back to her spot on the couch. The first 3 days were the adjustment days. Terrence was up at 6, had the kids fed and out the door by 7:45, was at his job at a logistics company in Mississauga by 8:30. Pauline slept late those first 2 mornings. Not because she was lazy, but because sleep was the only place Dennis couldn't reach her, and she was catching up on months of nights where sleep hadn't been a safe place to go. She started getting up by the 3rd day. She made coffee before Terrence was awake. She tidied the kitchen without being asked, quietly, the way someone does when they've been conditioned to take up as little space as possible. Terrence noticed. He didn't say anything about it directly. He just made a point every morning of leaving dishes in the drying rack and a jacket on the hook and his running shoes by the door. Small acts of untidiness that said, "You don't have to clean up after me. This isn't a hotel. You are a person living here." On the 4th evening, Yemi came home from school and found Pauline sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop, working. Pauline did freelance graphic design. She'd built that up quietly over the years, a private lifeline she'd kept separate from Dennis, a small proof to herself that she could exist without him. "What are you making?" Yemi asked, setting her backpack down and pulling herself up onto the chair beside her. "A logo," Pauline said, "for a bakery in Oakville. Can I see?" Pauline turned the laptop. The logo was a loaf of bread inside a simple circle, clean and warm, the kind of image that made you think of Saturday mornings. Yemi studied it with the gravity of someone 3 times her age. "The bread needs to be a little more golden," she said, "like actual bread." Pauline looked at the screen. Then she looked at this 9-year-old girl who had given her best Christmas socks and was now critiquing her color palette. "You know what?" she said. "You're right." She adjusted the color. Yemi watched. Then she said, "There," with complete satisfaction and went to get a snack. That was the moment Pauline stopped feeling like a guest. It was Tobias who asked the question no one else had. He asked it on a Saturday morning 10 days in. Terrence was at the hardware store. Yemi was at her friend's place 2 floors down. It was just Tobias and Pauline, and he was making toast, and he said without looking up, "Did someone hurt you?" Pauline paused. She was sitting at the table with her coffee. "Yes," she said. He nodded slowly, turned the toast over in his hands. "My dad doesn't talk about it when people go through hard things," he said. "He just does stuff, like makes extra food, or doesn't turn the TV too loud." He set the toast on his plate. "It means he cares, in case you didn't know." Pauline looked at the back of this 12-year-old's head. "I figured," she said. "Okay," Tobias said, and brought his toast to the table. They ate in comfortable silence, the February light coming through the kitchen window pale and flat, the way Canadian winter light does when the sky can't decide whether to clear or to storm. 2 weeks in, Pauline's phone rang. She was in the living room when it happened, and Terrence was in the kitchen, and she picked it up and saw the name and stood very still. He watched her from the doorway, not wanting to intrude. She let it ring. She watched it ring 5 times, then go to voicemail. Then she set the phone face down on the couch cushion and sat with her hands in her lap. "He left a voicemail," she said, mostly to herself. "You don't have to listen to it." "I know." She looked at her phone. "I know I don't have to do anything he wants anymore. I know that, I just..." She stopped. 12 years is a long time to unknow something. Terrence sat down in the armchair across from her, not too close. He'd learned over these weeks that Pauline needed space around her the way some plants need air. Not because she was fragile, but because she'd spent years having that space taken. "When I got divorced," he said, "I spent 3 months thinking every hard day was proof I'd made the wrong choice. Even though I knew I hadn't, even though every calm morning without the fighting, I could feel myself breathing again." He looked at his hands. It takes a while for your nervous system to believe what your brain already knows. Pauline didn't say anything. You don't have to rush the believing, he said. She picked up the phone and deleted the voicemail without listening to it. Then she set the phone back down and exhaled the kind of breath that sounds like the end of a very long sentence. The weeks passed. Pauline's sister called from Halifax. Her friend Dorinda, who'd known about the situation for a year and said nothing because she hadn't known what to say, called and cried on the phone for 20 minutes, and then offered to drive up from Hamilton to bring some of Pauline's things from the house. Pauline let her. She met with a lawyer in late February, a small, focused woman named Cheryl, who wore sensible blazers and said things like, "We're going to be very organized about this, and let's make sure the documentation is clear." Pauline left that first appointment feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Like someone was in her corner who wasn't going to run out of room for her. The logo for the Oakville bakery went live. The bakery owner sent Pauline a box of croissants as a thank you. Yemi considered this a direct result of her color consultation and was very pleased with herself. Tobias, for his part, never brought up the Saturday morning conversation again. He didn't need to. He'd said what he needed to say and filed it away the way 12-year-olds do with the things they understand better than adults give them credit for. It was in the third week when Terrence came home from work to find Pauline standing at the stove. This wasn't unusual by this point. She'd started cooking dinner twice a week. She said it made her feel useful, and he'd learned not to argue with that. But that evening she wasn't cooking. She was just standing at the stove with the burner off, holding a wooden spoon, staring at nothing. "Pauline," she turned around. Her eyes were dry, but her face was doing something complicated. "I was thinking," she said, "about the first morning, when you picked me up. Okay, you didn't ask me a single thing. You just put my bags in the trunk." She looked down at the spoon. "Nobody's ever done that for me. Just acted, without making me justify it first." Terrence leaned against the counter. He didn't have a ready answer for that. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what kind of person I want to be on the other side of this." She set the spoon down on the counter. "I don't want to be the person who needed rescuing. I know that's what happened. I know I needed help and you gave it. But I don't want that to be how I understand myself." "That's not how I understand you," Terrence said. "I know." She picked up the spoon again, then put it down again. "I was 39 years old, standing on my own driveway in rubber boots and socks, with everything that mattered to me in 2 canvas bags. That's the lowest point I've ever been." She looked at him. "I need to build from that. I can't just be grateful and stay." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm not asking you to stay," he said carefully. "I know. I mean," he paused. "The boat creaks. It's not a long-term solution." Something loosened in her face. "The boat is genuinely terrible," she said. "Tobias thinks it's character building. Tobias is wrong." They stood there in the kitchen, the familiar quiet of the apartment settling around them. The sound of Yemi's music down the hall, the hum of the refrigerator, the snow starting up again against the window. "I found an apartment," Pauline said, "in Etobicoke, a 1-bedroom. Available March 1st, that's 2 weeks. I know." "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. Neither of them moved for a moment. "I want you to know," she said, "that I'm not leaving because I want to get away from here. I'm leaving because I think I need to be somewhere that's mine. Somewhere I built." Does that make sense? "It makes complete sense." "You didn't make me feel like a problem," she said. "You made me feel like a person. I want you to know that." He nodded. He was the kind of man who didn't know how to receive that kind of thing gracefully, so he didn't try to be graceful about it. He just said, "Good." She left on a Saturday. The apartment in Etobicoke was small and clean and had a window above the kitchen sink that looked out onto a street with a bakery on the corner. She told Yemi about the bakery, and Yemi said that was a sign, and Pauline said she thought so too. Terrence helped her carry boxes up 2 flights of stairs. Tobias came along, largely to operate the elevator doors and offer opinions about furniture placement that nobody had asked for, but that turned out to be mostly correct. Yemi insisted on carrying the plant, a small pothos that had been living on Terrence's bathroom windowsill and that Pauline had quietly kept alive for 6 weeks with the focused attention she gave to things she cared about. "It's yours now," Yemi said, placing it on Pauline's new kitchen windowsill with ceremony. I'll take care of it, Pauline said. I know you will, Yemi said. It likes indirect light. When they left that afternoon, Pauline stood in the middle of her new living room for a long time. No boxes left to open. No one to ask her why she was still standing there. Just the winter light coming through the windows and the sound of the street below and the pothos in the kitchen, quiet and green, already at home. She called her sister in Halifax that night. She called Dorinda after that. Then she sat on her new couch with a glass of wine and looked at the ceiling of a place that was hers alone and felt, for the first time in longer than she could remember, like the air in the room belonged to her. The lawyers handled the rest over the following months. Dennis did not go quietly. That would not have been like him. But Cheryl was, as promised, very organized, and the documentation was indeed very clear. And eventually the process wound its way to its conclusion the way these things do when one party has run out of ground to stand on. Pauline's client list grew. By spring, she had 4 regular clients and had turned down 2 more because she wanted to do good work, not fast work. The bakery in Oakville ordered a second design, packaging this time. Yemi was consulted. She and Terrence kept in touch the way they always had, easy, comfortable, not requiring maintenance. They had dinner once a month with the kids. She came to Tobias's school play in April and sat next to Yemi, who had opinions about the lighting design. There was no dramatic turning point, no moment when the sky broke open and the music swelled. Just ordinary life rebuilt slowly and with intention, the way things get rebuilt by people who decide that what happened to them is not the last word on who they are. Terrence, for his part, went back to his Tuesday mornings. Coffee at the kitchen window. Snow or no snow. The kids arguing over the bathroom. The quiet of a house that was exactly the right size. He thought sometimes about the morning the phone rang at 6:14. He thought about the 2 canvas bags on the snow-covered driveway, the rubber boots, the borrowed socks that Yemi gave away without a second thought. He thought about how small the apartment had seemed and how somehow it had been enough. There was room. There had always been enough room. That's the thing about kindness that people forget sometimes. It doesn't require a big space. It doesn't require perfect timing or a clean house or a plan. It just requires someone who picks up the phone, doesn't ask unnecessary questions, and drives. And maybe a daughter who knows when someone needs warm socks.